So Binance is listing Aptos APT tomorrow, or tonight actually. Some of the VC-backed coins like Solana had an almost 1000x run in the previous cycle. Is Aptos APT a similar bet for the next one? Let's explore it together right now. Not financial advice, not paid. I don't have any APT tokens and I don't have any exposure to Aptos or any of the other direct competitors like Sui, Solana, Near, other than Ethereum itself. I'm just trying to read stuff and make my own conclusion, and I'm happy to share it with you, whatever I find. So if we start with Aptos mainnet release blog, released 17 hours ago. Aptos Autumn is here. What they highlight themselves is better upgradability, the Move programming language, and the launch feature is really this Block-STM, which is really for parallel execution of smart contracts, and the usual of higher throughput, lower latency than the default, which is of course Ethereum. When researching this video, I came across this thread where Aptos themselves have broken down the white paper in what I suppose is intended to be something easier to understand. And since I'm lazy too, I thought that's great. Aptos is pushing the boundaries of what it means for blockchains to be safe, performance, and upgradable. A network designed with people at the center, global accessibility and availability. That was a lot of buzzwords in one tweet. Move is Rust-inspired and designed for smart contract development. That's good information. Move changes the game for Web3 building, combining simplicity with security. There's been a lot of game changers, guys. The Aptos blockchain natively integrates and internally uses the Move language for fast and secure transaction execution. Okay, you told us that in the last tweet. But here comes something useful. The Move Prover, a formal verifier for smart contracts, provides additional safeguards for contract invariance and behavior. Okay, a smart contract verifier. That is useful, but why didn't they just say so? Aptos makes it easy for developers to build consumer-ready applications through a best-in-class implementation, tested and hardened over 3 years. Yes, actually the first thing they wrote in the blog article was more than 4 years of hard work. So there is significant effort behind. To reach widespread adoption, Web3 must be safe, accessible, and applicable to existing use cases. Aptos is built with science-backed safeguards that ensure the security users need now, helping stop fraudulent attempts in the industry. Frankly, as you can see, this derailed into a bunch of buzzwords. This didn't in any way help. Let's go to the white paper on GitHub instead. I've read this and there are some genuine good things here. One is the Move language, which does have some advantages over Solidity, but this is significantly better than Rust that Solana uses, for example. I'm not so sure. But they do introduce some really novel improvements. Today, wallets provide little transparency about the transactions they sign. As a result, users are often easily tricked into signing malicious transactions that may steal funds. To address this, the Aptos ecosystem provides services for transaction pre-execution that describes to users in human-readable form the outcomes of their transactions prior to signing. That can be useful, but I think the biggest technical novelty is related to the batch processing. How they can group transactions, validators can stream batches of transactions to each other, and one of the key innovations of the Aptos blockchain is to decouple non-agreement related tasks out of the consensus phase. By decoupling transaction dissemination from the consensus phase, ordering can occur with very little bandwidth, resulting in high transaction throughput and minimized latency. More about blockchain time. This is 10 to the power of 3, meaning 1000 TPS as function of number of threads. Parallel transaction execution is well explained here, and it boils down to this Block-STM, which we'll come back to. Another thing that stood out to me that I think is very clever, which is not implemented in today's mainnet, but can come later, is having multiple sharded ledger states, and data can be transferred between shards through a bridge. And for example, one shard might be compute optimized with SSDs, another could be optimized for large hard drives with low compute characteristics. In telecom we call this network slicing, and shards basically just means that they're separate parts of the network, and in total they can increase the total capacity of the network, and here they also introduce the concept that you can have different characteristics in different shards. But again, the arguably biggest invention is this Block-STM. Here is a separate article from April which explains this in great detail, and the problem they try to solve is this. And listen carefully now, because now you will understand something that not many people have gotten. The reason it's so hard to scale up the capacity of blockchains is that validators must arrive at the same final state, which means that they need to execute the same sequence of transaction. Because if two transactions are trying to read or write the same data, for example, transfer some coins out, it matters who does it first, right? So then current blockchains either execute transactions sequentially, or there must be no inner conflicts, like trying to read or write the same data. And typically, transactions in a blockchain can have a significant number of access conflicts, for example, performance attacks or accessing popular contracts, like auctions or arbitrage. An alternative approach that some have tried is to force the user to declare any dependencies up front, but that instead limits what the transaction can do and may require one transaction to be broken up. And what they try to do here with their parallel execution engine is to manage all conflicts internally and automatically adopt the workload. In comes the STM approach, which stands for Software Transactional Memory. That is not new as such, but the way that they apply it here on the blockchain is kinda new. In short, they try to execute, and in some situations when there is a dependency, it aborts and resumes. In some other situation, it finishes executing. But the details here are not quickly explained in a short video. The glorious details are in the paper, yeah. But as far as I can tell, this probably works. There are some real innovations here, and I like innovation. Then when researching this today, I went in here to check what are people saying in the Twitter comments here. Then I read a rather interesting thread that was really from the opposition party. And then when I was going to load it again now to record this video, Aptos has actually gone in and hidden the thread. And as some guy writes here, pretty sure this is the only organic response to the thread, and they hid it. Yeah, they did. Seriously, really. But your CTO found it. It was this one. Some things here are interesting, but some other things are straight wrong. He writes here, let's look at the transaction speed of Aptos. Aptos promised over 100k TPS in the finalized version. Yes, they did. We just read that, right? And then his point was that if you look at the actual transactions, you have hours, minutes, seconds. There's not many transactions per second here. And if you take user transactions only, it's only a few per minute. Not 160,000 per second. But he misunderstands one thing. 160,000 TPS is the claimed maximum throughput. What we're looking at in the Block Explorer are the actual transactions. And since there really aren't any apps or any usage right now, that's almost zero. That doesn't mean they were lying. Let's continue. It's hard to see how users can even use Aptos right now. I personally can't find any RPCs to connect or any validators to send transactions. Then he's saying they disabled the Discord. Users couldn't chat or ask any questions. They've opened a few channels, but important channels like dev resources are still closed. I'll come back to the Discord later. If you guys knew something went wrong, why not announce it publicly instead of shutting down your Discord and pretending the launch went smoothly? Additionally, let's take a look at the tokenomics of Aptos using on-chain data. TLDR, you're going to get dumped on. We will come back to that also, including the total supply here. And he highlights there's a lot of 100 million of Aptos that are not accounted for. And if I had to guess, I'd say that this guy is probably in a Sui camp, and that's maybe why he's writing this. But trying to hide counter-arguments instead of answering them does not make you a star in my book. There's some other people who compare then Aptos and Solana as having the highest TPS, Avalanche, FTM, Ethereum, Terra, Bitcoin, BSC and so on. But let's remember, it's very easy to have a high theoretical throughput when there are no users. The real test will come when there is real commercial usage on this blockchain. Let's move on to the funding. There's always a lot of misinformation on social media, so we have to be careful where we take the information from. This is from Aptos themselves discussing the funding. And on July 25th, they announced another 150 million founding round led by FTX, Apollo, Griffin, Franklin, Circle Ventures, A16Z and so on, raising the total funding to 350 million. So VCs have put in $350 million. It's important to remember that number. And with that kind of money, they can do things like this. Aptos Grant Program. If you program stuff and make them open source, you get money distributed in US dollars. So you pay money to create tools, to create dApps, and hope that that will be enough for it to continue growing by itself. But make no mistake, that's not a decentralized approach. So let's look into the open source libraries and see how far they've come. GitHub, store projects on the Aptos GitHub. I'm clicking the link on Aptos Foundation Developer Resources. That leads here, Aptos Foundation. This organization has no public repositories. The wrong place, there is an Aptos Labs with Aptos Core that has 4K stars and quite a lot of activity. I then looked into some of the developer tutorials, and there's some pretty good tutorials here. And there's a bunch of examples on the GitHub, like to create a coin, looks neat, mint NFT example, marketplace, and so on. But then again, it feels not ready. Under developer tutorials, maybe the first thing you go to is your first dApp. And then the first thing you find is that the full source code for this tutorial is being updated. Meanwhile, the older one is available here. Okay, so perhaps this is not the way to do it then. No idea what's the difference between the old way and the new way and so on. So if you worked for 4 years and you don't have the dApp example ready on the day of the launch and a few hours before the listing, that's not great. And it actually gets kind of worse from here. There is a Tokenomics Overview document published a few hours ago, which presents a summary version of the Aptos protocol tokenomics, where it says community will have 51% of tokens, core contributors 19%, foundation 16.5%, investors 13.48%, total 1 billion tokens. The distribution of this community, this one, and foundation, this one, breaks it down. 125 million available to support ecosystem projects, grants, and other community growth initiatives, like the ones we looked at. 5 million Aptos Foundation initiatives, and 120th of the remaining tokens are anticipated to unlock each month for the next 10 years. And then core contributors and investors, which are these 19% plus 13.48%, total 32%, so that's a lot, will not be available the first 12 months. And then from the 13th month, 3/48 of such tokens unlock on the 13th month after mainnet launch, and each month thereafter, up to and including the 18th month. Then 1/48 beginning on the 19th month. Then it gets more complicated. Today, more than 82% of the tokens on the network are staked across all categories, and the majority of these are currently locked in accordance with the distribution schedule above and not available for release. The red then is the staking rewards, then it's green is community, core contributors yellow, foundation red, and investors blue. And then here it says anticipated total circulating total supply for the next 10 years. And it starts here at maybe 200 million, something like that, November 2022. Then, as we read, for the first 12 months, there's no unlock for the investors blue or core contributors yellow, who for all practical purposes run this project today. But my question is, are all these green ones actually unlocked and distributed and available for trading right now? And then I went in the Aptos Discord and asked a ridiculous amount of times how many tokens are actually circulating today. How many of those tokens are actually circulating, unlocked, and available for trading? How many tokens are circulating, unlocked, and available for trading? Can't you answer that, please? But the only answers I got was that the Aptos Foundation has provided a summary version of the Aptos protocol tokenomics, which can be found here. A more comprehensive explanation of the Aptos tokenomics and values is coming soon. So after working on this for more than 4 years, hours before listing on the world's biggest exchange, it's not possible to get a straight answer on how many tokens are actually circulating available for trading. I'm sure they will come out with the data later today or tomorrow, but that's not a good look from an execution capability perspective. So in summary, this is a proof of stake chain with some credible founders from DM, the Facebook blockchain project that got shut down. They're definitely bringing some innovations to the table. I think it will be interesting to see. At this point, this is not a decentralized project. This is run by VCs and a team, much like a company. And even the Ethereum narrative has been hit with question marks around decentralization and censorship. And even adoption has a long way to go, even for Ethereum, beyond a handful of applications like tokens, NFTs, and DeFi trading, which are very successful. But the target opportunity for a blockchain is much bigger than that. And on the bright side then, those are still up for grabs. VCs then. What is their business model really? Is it education? Is it to take us to Mars? No, it is to buy something and then exit at a significantly higher price. Exit means selling the stuff to somebody else, as close to the top as possible. These narratives of fairly complex technical discussions work. Cardano is one example. Most people watching Charles Hoskinson's 3-hour whiteboard exercises can't really explain it later. Same here. I hope you felt that when we start reading the document. It gets really complex really fast, and even if you start reading the documents, it starts saying, well, this is pretty complicated, you better go and read the real research paper. But to create a narrative around that there is some innovation, this can be very successful. But are there real benefits? Yeah, I think there are, definitely. These projects have taken learnings from Ethereum. The Ethereum white paper was published in 2014. That's 8 years ago. Of course there are improvements that can be made. But is it enough advantages to replace it? That's the question. If you recall my previous old videos, I told you that 3G for mobile phones never became the largest mobile technology, even after 10 years. It was radically better than 2G, but never better enough to become the biggest. It was only when we did 4G LTE that it was better enough to actually become the biggest mobile technology. So we're talking 20 years until we could build something that became the biggest. I think it will be the same here. The question isn't if one of these are better than Ethereum or BSC or Solana. The question is if they are so much better, not only in technology, but in execution capability to overtake the leading incumbent, which today is Ethereum, who is also doing improvements but at a slower pace because they feel they can't afford to go fast and break things. They carry the responsibility of this industry on their shoulders. If Aptos stops working today, nothing happens. If Solana stops their blockchain 10 times, it's okay. It's not the end of crypto. But if Ethereum breaks for real, that's different. So they are bound to be slower. But for the VCs, maybe it doesn't matter what the end game becomes, because it's enough if it gets one big run like Solana did. And then what happens after that maybe doesn't matter from an investment perspective. But the timing here is really important. If it pumps like crazy after 6 months, and then by month 11 is down again, that won't do them any good, because their unlocks start only after 12 months, contrary to almost everyone else. I think this outcome can't be predicted, because it has very little to do who has the marginally better technology. And I say that even though I'm the technology guy. I think following what actually plays out from an execution perspective, using tools like Lars Online to try to latch on to the uptrends while trying to dodge out when it starts failing, is the right approach. I'm not saying this to promote anything. You can't even join as a member now. I've taken it down. I'm genuinely saying this because I think it's the only way to maneuver in this landscape. Look at all the people who have been predicting stuff out there, how wrong they've been the last year, and see for yourself. The launch felt shaky. A day before listing, and they won't disclose how many tokens are actually open for trading. After 4 years of work, really. If the VCs have put in 350 million in something so incredibly risky as blockchain, they for sure target between 10x to 100x return on that. Otherwise, it's just not worth the risk. If this comes out at 2 billion market cap, around, for example, Near or Algorand, based on 200 million circulating supply. We know that the total supply was 1 billion, so fully diluted market cap would be 10 billion, which would actually then be higher fully diluted market cap than, for example, Polygon Matic, which is at position 11 on CoinMarketCap with a lot of actual decentralized development going on. If that happens, that would seem a very high valuation to me. So I'm not interested in buying the listing on this one. I'm going to wait and see if the initial excitement dies down in a couple of months, but then find some traction. If we look again at the early phases of Solana, that would have been a very successful approach. It started here, then the first blue to gold flip happened here at around 80 cents, had a good run up to 460, flipped blue at $2, flipped gold again at $3, hesitated at 28, but continued at 40, reached the peak of 266, turned blue again at 170, 180 something, and has been blue since, down to 31 today. So I'm not going to buy anything now, but I will definitely put it on my watch list and see if something similar plays out. And I will combine that with the knowledge that the VCs and the team will probably start selling somewhere around here in November 2023 and onwards. It's finally time for Fan of the Day. 3, are you ready? 2, 1. Fan of the Day is James Bond. Sir, don't take this wrong. Coop is pronounced coup. Love your show. You are right. In Swedish, it's pronounced coop, but in English, it's pronounced coup, because it's borrowed from Old French, where it's pronounced coup. But the French borrowed it from Latin colpus, where the P is not silent. So the Swedes are still right, and the French and the English are wrong.
Vad är ditt budskap när du sitter?
So what is really the purpose of the channel? What is the message I want to give? What do you think it is?
Come on, say asshole. Lika det där.
So we've installed new sound panels in the studio. Let's check the echo. 0. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, tack. CTO Larsen out. Hej då!